And welcome back, everyone, to episode 7 of the Sports Coverage Podcast. My name is Andrew, and I'm alongside, as always, my co host, Vince. It has been a crazy week in a bunch of sports, especially last week, which is why we titled our last video What Happened, because really, what happened? And we have even more stuff to be completely confused and surprised by coming up in this episode that we are going to talk about. So, as always, we are going to jump right in with the NFL. And as I just said, it's been a crazy week and a shocking week, especially in football, with two very important running back injuries that happened this week were Nick Chubb suffered a horrific season-ending knee injury, and Saquon Barkley suffered an ankle sprain versus the Arizona Cardinals and will miss 3 weeks of the season. So obviously, we hope that both these guys recover as fast as possible, and we wish them our best in their recovery process. So, Vince, these are two very important injuries that could change the course of the season for both of those teams. What are your thoughts on them?
Yeah, first I'm gonna talk about Chubb and prayers to Chubb. I hope he can recover as soon as possible. But obviously back to the injury discussion. A lot of running back news has gone around this past offseason with wanting more pay. And to be honest, in order to be honored to get paid, they need to be treated with the best care, whether it's removing turf or decreasing the amount of collisions due every week. Because these running backs are risking their health, and in order for them to decrease the limit of injuries that the defense is gonna hit, like just collide into them every single week. They're just gonna have to be more mindful and careful on how they just collide into an opponent like a running back, for example, like Nick Chubb. And obviously that wasn't intentional, but just looking at the replays, it was so careless of an injury. And so, no, obviously, I hope we can figure out like a solution for this running back, and not just running backs, but just injuries in general, because we need the sport to just be a better as it goes.
And with the Saquon Barkley injury that happened at State Farm Stadium, which is the Arizona Cardinals indoor air conditioned stadium, so they have turf in there. And
Yeah, and at the Super Bowl, a lot of
yeah,
stuff happened with, CJ Johnson came out. He said, let's replay the Super Bowl because of how slippery the turf was. And I can only imagine how bad the playing on turf was, especially at State Farm, and especially in the NFL stadium. Not just, we're not going to just say State Farm Stadium, but I mean, that was also the biggest stage. They want to have the best equipment to show off, on national television. But, it really just wasn't a good look with all these injuries that are happening. So I think we need to definitely resolve this issue with the turf.
and actually, I'm looking at State Farm Stadium. So they use a hybrid of real grass and like a synthetic thing to keep it alive because they're inside most of the time. So it may not be turf and that thing. And it's, what we saw with Barkley is he got his foot caught there, and it just kind of it's a normal ankle sprain. But
Yeah.
for Chubb, like you were saying, it's just such a careless injury that could have been avoided in a couple ways. They're playing football. Injuries are
I mean,
very
listen,
common in
yeah,
this.
but and obviously that was his knee, and coaches, not even just in the NFL, in the sport and football, just in general, like you are told by your coaches to go for the waist down. I mean, am I right? I mean, you're told to
Yeah,
go waist down, not ahead, because obviously head injuries, that's been another issue over the course of the last couple of years. And so now, especially with this injury, like the knee, it's just such a careless injury. It's so careless, and it definitely could have gotten avoided. So I think we definitely have to just be a little more careful and minded on how these defenders collide into their opponent.
and this is Nick Chubb's second significant knee injury slash leg injury of his football career, whether professional or in college, which could very well play a big role on his career as a whole, not just him being sidelined for the season. So, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, and that was the same knee he had originally injured in college. I think I'm right. Yeah, I think it was the
I think it
same.
is. Yeah.
Yeah, the same exact injury he had injured in college, and that was a very bad injury itself. But just again, like I pray for Chubb. I hope he gets back as soon as possible because he's worked for this moment, and we gotta just let him ball out because he's such a good player, and it just wastes talent
Mhm.
each and every year, every time. And we've seen injuries with him in the past, but just this is really, it's a hard one to
Yeah.
watch, and just the replays were just, it's so horrific. So
Yeah.
I definitely pray. That's, yeah, I'm praying for him.
So So Barkley, thank goodness, has a less gruesome and less affecting injury as a whole for the Giants season and for him as a player. So he will be sidelined presumably for games against the Seahawks and Dolphins unless he can make a pretty fast return, which I think many Giants fans would be happy with. So these are two very tough opponents that the Giants will face, especially after not scoring a touchdown in last week's game against the 49ers. So do you think the Giants can still perform as they did in that second half in in Arizona?
Arizona.
Yeah,
I mean,
because yeah,
I think we can all agree that this has to be the hardest 2 game stretch for this Giants team this season. And even if they had Barkley, I don't think they would have won any of these matchups just because they're playing two great teams in the Dolphins and Lions who have proved that they are playoff teams. And just seeing how they've been playing this season already, they've looking sharp and like they're looking good. So I definitely don't see the Giants beating any of these two teams. And whether or not Saquon comes back, I don't see them winning without him back in the lineup.
yeah, and we're gonna move on to another pretty bad injury in the NFL. So Trayvon Diggs has suffered a torn ACL in practice and will miss the remainder of the NFL season. He is a top defender and a big part of the Cowboys team that many expect to go all the way this year. Do you think this affects the Cowboys' incredible defense that much? And will this hinder their ability to make it far in the playoffs?
Well, I definitely this is definitely gonna hurt them a lot. And they obviously got Stephon Gilmore in this past offseason, but they were known as the best two corners in football. A lot of this offseason has gone around with the discussion of who's the best cornerback duo, and many have said, "Oh, it's Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard. Oh, it's Stephon Gilmore and Trayvon Diggs." But now with Trayvon Diggs hurt, it's really only Stephon Gilmore. The Cowboys have good corners. Kader Kohu, but I just think that with this injury, it's gonna hurt them so much that yeah, this defense is amazing. I mean, that's to be honest. They've only let up 10 points in the last 2 weeks of the season. And so I really just don't think that this team will recover from this as soon as possible. But I do think they could definitely make a big run in the playoffs. I mean, hopefully, I said in the beginning of the podcast, like in our discussions for standing predictions, I said this team might not even make it out of the second round. Obviously, they've only let up 10 points this season. So, they're looking like a good team right now. So we just got to see how they bounce back from this huge, significant injury.
Yeah, and I think this is definitely something that other teams can take advantage of, especially the high ranked opponents that the Cowboys will go against for the rest of the season. So we'll see
For
what
sure.
happens with the Cowboys there. But speaking of the Cowboys, we're going to talk about a couple of the remaining undefeated teams going into the next week of the NFL season, which are the 49ers, Commanders, Bucks, Dolphins, Saints, Cowboys, Ravens, Falcons, and Eagles. So our question for this week is which team is most likely to keep their position as an undefeated team as long as they can. So I have the Cowboys. I don't like the Cowboys. I'm a Giants fan, but their team is just so good, and what we've seen from them in the first couple of games is absolutely insane. They have a fairly good schedule coming up, so I think that they can last longer than a few of the other teams on this list. But I'm not counting out the surprises like the Commanders and Bucks being on this list.
Listen, I like your pick, but we got to remember Trayvon Diggs is out. So can that defense still be the same defense they have been these past 2 weeks?
No one's going to be able to get past the D line.
Listen, I mean, yeah, obviously, but I'm just saying, like, with like corners and safeties, the secondary, can they improve from this? Can they be better from that? It really just depends. And I like your pick. I'm not hating on the pick, and I like it a lot. I'm telling you, I think this Cowboys team is amazing. But I'm gonna have to be biased here. I'm taking the Dolphins. You already know everyone has been talking about the Dolphins these past 2 weeks. I don't know if it's just me that's heard people saying it, but I hear news outlets, I hear ESPN, I hear Fox, I hear CBS, I hear all these news outlets saying how good this Dolphins team is, and they really are a special team. And I'm not just gonna go ahead and talk about a whole segment about the Dolphins here, but I'm gonna kind of talk about the last 2 weeks of the season. They played the Chargers. It was a hard game. They came out with a victory. They beat them by 2 points. It was a pretty difficult win for us, but we came out with a win. And then we obviously go to week 2 against the Patriots. This is a really good team. We got to remember that they have a Hall of Fame coach, Bill Belichick. Don't doubt the defense and don't doubt the offense. They're a good, great team. Towards the end of the game, I actually was getting a little scared thinking that the Dolphins are going to lose. But as we know, the Dolphins are that good of a team, and they ended up winning against a Hall of Fame coach.
Yeah,
And also they were playing away the first 2 games of the season, which is pretty hard. And I mean, I know it's just 2 games, but you're going. The team has not played in Miami since August. It's the end of September now. They have not played since August. It's the end of September. Like it's a really good start to the season, and that's why I think the Dolphins can definitely be a significant team from this going forward. I think they can still be undefeated going forward.
And something interesting and a tough task for the Dolphins coming up is the Bills on August 1st at 1:00. So the Bills had an interesting start to the season, losing to the Jets, and we don't even need to talk about the Jets anymore. We already know what's going on there.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot.
Last week they faced a fairly good team and came out with the W on that one. So it's going to be interesting if the Bills can return to their prime form. Josh Allen can throw for a ton of yards. It's going to be interesting how the Dolphins are going to fare away against the Bills next week. So we will see how the undefeated teams stand and who is left standing after this week in the NFL, and we will come back to that next week. So moving on to the next football league, college football. So one of the big games of the week we talked about last week was Gators versus Tennessee. Vince, you went to that game, so
listen, Andrew, I told you the Gators were gonna win. I told you the Gators were gonna win. I mean, they should be calling us the 12th man. How loud it was in the swamp on Saturday night. It was electric. The atmosphere was crazy. I don't think I've been to such a good Gator game in my life. I've been going to good Gator games. I went to the Tennessee game the year before the last year, and I went to the Utah game last year. The Utah game last year was insane. Anthony Richardson made some pretty huge plays, but it was nothing like this season against Tennessee. It was a huge game, fans fighting. I mean, but I told you, Angel. I told you this Gators team was gonna win, and Tennessee has not won in the swamp for 20 years. 20 years they have not won in Florida. I mean, that is pretty huge. I mean, just realizing how better they're supposed to be than the Gators. And now we see that they're the 25th ranked team in the country, and Tennessee went down to in the middle of the 20s. So this is definitely a huge win for this organization. I think with this win, we could definitely get back on track, and definitely we can stay ranked and get higher rankings. Definitely get a good bowl game. We're hoping for that.
So Tennessee is currently ranked number 23 and Florida 25. Tennessee is currently playing against UTSA, and it's 14-0 in favor of Tennessee, currently as of recording. And Florida will play home against Charlotte tonight at 7. Again, we film all of these on the Saturday before posting, so you will have all of the scores and who won those games that we're talking about right now when this comes out. So we'll see if we get our upcoming predictions right. So for game of the week picks this week, I'm just going to talk about the game going on right now that I'm paying the most attention to. Alabama versus Ole Miss. Alabama has had a very, very rough start to the season, and that is showing as it is currently 7-3 in favor of Ole Miss. This is a win or die situation for Alabama. If they lose, the season is playoff hopes, all that's kind of out the window. And for Ole Miss, that would just be huge, propel them even higher. They're ranked number 15 at the moment, Alabama 13, which is the lowest they have been in years. And if they lose, they will fall even lower. So I'm just going to keep talking about the score of that game with what happens throughout the rest of the recording. And you guys will be able to see who won that game when this comes out on Monday. Vince, what is your game of the week?
Yeah, I got Ohio State versus Notre Dame. See, I would pick Colorado versus Oregon, but I'm obviously not going to be biased because game day went to Notre Dame today. But I just think like these are two top 10 ranked teams playing against each other. I mean, when this is such a huge matchup, and it could definitely like with a win against like for example Notre Dame. Like if Notre Dame wins this game, Ohio State will drop so back in the rankings. It's crazy, and obviously Notre Dame would be a top 5 team probably. So this is why this game is so important for both of these teams. And see, I love Ohio State. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a great receiver, but I don't think they had the team to compete with Sam Hartman and Notre Dame. So give me Notre Dame tonight.
Nice. So we will see what happens with those games, and we'll recap them next week on episode 8 already, which is crazy. So
Yeah.
something big that happened last week, another injury, unfortunately, that we have to talk about is Travis Hunter was hit hard in last week's game against Colorado State and is likely to miss a very long time. So it was a very controversial hit. I think the guy who made the hit was ejected, correct?
No, he didn't actually get ejected,
He
which
didn't get
is
ejected.
which is really surprising. And you know, I got home late at night. Obviously, you can tell because I went to the game, the Gator game, but I stayed up to watch the game, and I wasn't happy with the hit. I was a little mad because I was really rooting for this Colorado team throughout the season, especially Travis Hunter, because of how freak of an athlete he is, and it's very disappointing with this hit. I'm guessing everyone has seen the hit on whether it's on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, or any social media platform. You've seen the injury. It's really gruesome. It's painful to watch, but I think with him out, it could definitely hurt this team. And as of right now, Colorado is losing to Oregon 13-0, which is not what we would see out of Colorado this season. I mean, they're such a good team that we don't really see that from. Oh my god! As I'm saying this, Oregon just scored another touchdown. This is crazy, man. I'm sorry, but this Colorado team is definitely having a downfall. I don't want to break the news saying that I love this team, but I think this is really a downfall for this team. I mean, Oregon just scored as I'm saying it, so this is huge. But I gotta ask something to you, Andrew. Do you think they can beat USC next week though, if they do possibly lose to Oregon?
That is an interesting question, and it also we'll see where they're ranked if they win this game or not. But
I don't know. Will they be ranked? It's the
I don't. Yeah,
question.
that's also a good question if they're even going to be ranked. But USC is currently ranked number 5, and they are playing tonight. Um, they're playing tonight against Arizona State, which will be a pretty easy game for them. USC has been on the rise like crazy the last couple of years, and I would probably be rooting for them in that game if Colorado is really falling off like they could potentially be right now. So I think Colorado's big hopes for stuff, at least at the moment, might be over with these 2 weeks if they lose to Oregon and if they end up losing to USC, which I unfortunately think they might.
Yeah, I really hope. I was wishing for them to make it to the college football playoff, and honestly, I already wish it was the 12 team college football playoff standing bracket now this season. But obviously, it's next season starting. But with only the 14 bracket, Colorado's not going to be able to make it to the playoffs. Obviously, they're possibly going to have a good bowl game just about how based off how good they've been these last couple of weeks, but with the loss to Oregon and USC without their best player, this is definitely going to hurt them. And obviously, we'll cover the USC game next week. We'll definitely be talking about this Colorado team in weeks prior. So, to the NBA, Andrew, I'll let you take off.
Yeah, and just real quick, it is now 7-6 in the Ole Miss Alabama game as Alabama gets another field goal with 5:42 left in the second. So the NBA, some surprising news that has just kind of awoken from a slumber again that Vince and I have not brought up since episode 1 is the Damian Lillard trade situation. So there are more rumors and reports about this that have come up within the last week, and we have reports that new teams, Bulls and Raptors, have shown interest, but we know Miami Heat have been and still are the front runner for Damian Lillard. So we talked earlier or in the first episode, which is already so long ago,
Yeah, it's
about
like 7 weeks
what
ago.
about what they would want for Damian Lillard. And we kind of came to the conclusion that they would want some pretty good young players, potentially some picks, but looking at how what's going on now and how long it's taken for us to even get the rumors back up again, who are you looking at as a potential trade piece, or do you even still think this trade's going to go through?
Yeah, when the first episode was first published, my original thought was Damian Lillard is not going to possibly even get traded within the upcoming season. I thought he wasn't even going to get traded into this upcoming offseason. I thought it was going to be, middle of the year, trade deadline, huge news. But no, I changed my decision. I really think he might get traded in October during the preseason. I think he might get traded. Hear me out. Damian Lillard has been saying a lot of stuff ever since our first episode, and it hasn't been huge, but now this week has been a huge time, and he's definitely said a lot of stuff. Obviously the Bulls and Raptors have reached out to the Blazers for Dame, but they're still looking at the Heat for a potential trade. Now, at the moment, the Heat weren't solidifying an offer, you know. But back
Yeah,
to what you were saying, they're looking to give the lowest ability they can possibly give, whether it's picks or valuable young assets. When it comes to young valuable assets, what stands out to me is the rookie Jaime Jaquez Jr., the rookie from the year before that, um, Jovic, or
yeah,
whether it's Tyler Hero. These are three guys that I feel like are the main key pieces to getting traded to start the Damian Lillard era in Miami. Now, I love these three guys. I think they're phenomenal players, phenomenal young players, but it really just depends within the time. And I think we will definitely be able to cover this now more because a lot of news has broke out the last couple of weeks. But when it comes to picks, also, I feel like it's like the first round picks. I feel like it's the second round picks. It's definitely not going to be a third round pick, fourth round pick, or fifth round pick needed for Dame. I think it's going to be a high
yeah,
pick, but a young, valuable asset, whether it's the
yeah.
three guys I named.
And that is definitely something that would need to be sent in a Dame trade. So we will see what happens with this. I agree with you. I think this trade is still going to take even longer to go through. We said in the first
And
episode
hopefully,
that it
listen,
could
and
be months.
hopefully,
Yeah.
yeah, hopefully it's October. Hopefully, because I really want Dame's era to start in Miami soon.
Yeah. And we said in first episode it could be months to years, which were the reports at the time, which should be interesting.
And Andrew,
So
let me, one more thing I just have to point out is that Dame, you know, it just really it depends on the timing and the right ability. Because what if he stays with the Blazers? Like what if the Blazers don't want to trade him? It's going to be huge. So hopefully the Miami Heat can pursue this trade because it will be huge for not just the Heat fans but the NBA in general.
yeah, and we're just going to quickly talk about one new piece of news going on in the MLB. So we talked about the Shohei Ohtani injury recently, and reports have come out that Shohei Ohtani has cleaned out his Angels locker and that he will not hit until the start of the 2024 season and will not pitch until the 2025 season. So it looks like Shohei Ohtani will not be staying in Los Angeles, at least Anaheim in Los Angeles, as the Dodgers could very well be a front runner in the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. So the contract is still going to be historic. All that stuff is still going to be crazy. That's going to dominate the MLB offseason. This year, I think Shohei Ohtani is still going to be the best, if not top 3 best players in baseball all time if he can return to pitching and everything goes well with his injury rehab. And I don't really think that this is going to affect his future crazy contract coming up this offseason.
I mean, what if he doesn't, what if the Angels don't want to, give him a contract? What if he does get traded? Do you think his injury does affect whether he goes to the Mets, the Yankees, the Phillies, whatever team it is? Do you think it really affects the trading value?
I don't think.
I mean, listen,
yeah.
I personally think that it's not because he's such a generational talent, and obviously he's getting older. Obviously, he's getting older, but he's still so good that I don't think it really matters. And I see we got to look at the future, not just the present moment of him being injured. Yeah, and let's say he does get traded. Let's say he does get traded for the 2024 season.
Well,
listen,
he's not going to get traded because he.
Well,
yeah, he's a free agent this year. So.
Yeah. Well, listen. What if he just, does it affect like his future, even in the Hall of Fame? Do you think he can? I know you say he's generational, huge generational talent, and you say like, oh, he's one of the best players to ever play baseball. Do you think this affects him like getting into the Hall?
No, not at all. He still is broken.
I mean, I think he's gonna have.
He's breaking records set by Babe Ruth in.
I mean, he won't be able to hit for another
and,
year, and he won't be able to pitch for another 2 years, which is definitely affecting. And I think I'm just saying, I think his pitching is way better than his hitting, so it's definitely hurtful for him. But
that doesn't matter because remember, Aaron Judge is getting paid $40 million a year, and he this year hit. Well, he got injured, but he hit about as well as Shohei Ohtani. He made 40, but Shohei Ohtani was also a front runner in the Cy Young race. So he's still going to get paid a ton of money. He is still
for sure. No,
he is still
no matter
going
where
to
he goes, he's still going to get
one
paid,
of the
even
best.
If he's, even if he's going even if he's going to undergo another Tommy John surgery, I feel like he's still going to be the same player he's been his whole career.
Yeah, so good luck to him on his speedy recovery. I feel like we've talked so much about injuries this episode, but also just quickly want to jump back to the NFL real quick. Jamal Williams has been placed on the IR and is reported to miss at least 4 games with a hamstring injury. So the Saints have been a bit of a breakout team. They've looked pretty good so far. And with a new quarterback, especially, I think this could greatly affect the team. Just any quick thoughts?
And they're going through a lot of running back problems with Alvin Kamara suspended and stuff. So this is definitely gonna affect them. It's gonna definitely hurt them. But Jamal Williams has been very special. Not only obviously he hasn't been able to show. It's only been 2 weeks, but just like what he did for the Lions organization was huge. So I definitely just think we have to see. And I definitely love him, but I think he definitely get a huge start with his new team in the Saints. Well, after his injury, obviously.
Yep. So, as always, at the end of our episodes, we do the fast facts, and we have 3 for you this episode. First of all, in the MLB, continuing with baseball, Ronald Acuna Jr. becomes the 5th player with a 40-40 season, joining legends Alfonso Soriano, A-Rod, Barry Bonds, and Jose Canseco. He has just been an absolutely insane player this year, going to win MVP. Braves are going to go deep in the playoffs, potentially win the
World Series.
2023 World Series.
They're winning the World Series.
All right, then they're winning the World Series. We'll see on that, Vince.
Hey, we definitely got to discuss postseason in future episodes.
Yeah.
This is going to be an exciting
postseason. Don't worry, that will be coming, guys.
Definitely a huge postseason.
Yeah. Our second fast fact from the NBA, the Warriors have said that they will not be interested in signing former one-time NBA champ Dwight Howard, despite their difficulties at the center position. The Warriors have been one of the best teams of the past couple years, and they've struggled with injury and just finding players to fill the spots.
Yeah, and especially
So-
the center position, which kind of surprises me that they're not even giving an opportunity to Dwight Howard, who's still capable enough to be such a dynamic and good player. Obviously he plays in Taiwan right now, and he's doing great. And obviously it's nothing compared to the NBA, but I think an NBA team should give him a shot. And I think the Warriors were the best team that he could possibly go to, but as we know, he's no longer going to be available with the Warriors. So definitely hurts me seeing that he's not going to be able to go back to an NBA team. But
Mhm.
hopefully,
And
listen, hopefully the Warriors can definitely find another center that they can give an opportunity to, because the center position is, I would say, one of the most important positions in the league.
yeah, I agree with that. And our last fast fact talking about the NFL is news has broke that Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson will be fined $35,513 by the NFL after being called for 2 unnecessary roughness play penalties that definitely looked like face mask during the game. So that's just an interesting little bit of penalty talk, stuff
I
like
don't.
that.
I mean,
And it's interesting because we were talking about the Nick Chubb hit from the same game and stuff like that people are calling nasty and unfair and stuff.
This is definitely a huge loss for the Browns this week.
And I think that this wasn't necessarily a good move because this probably adds fuel to the flame when it comes to Browns fans being mad about the hits against Nick Chubb and then their quarterback getting fined $35,000. But I think it is still, they were still 2 unnecessary hits, as the penalty is called unnecessary roughness. So that's just something to consider in the upcoming weeks, with especially talking about injuries and the legal and illegal hits, blocks, face masks, etc. So that concludes the 7th episode of the Sports Coverage Podcast. As always, subscribe, drop a like, follow our Instagram, where we are going to be posting clips, announcements when we post future videos. And we also are starting YouTube Shorts, so make sure you go check out the clips, which will be coming soon. Thank you, everyone, for listening. I'm Andrew. I'm alongside my co-host Vince, and this was the 7th episode of the Sports Coverage Podcast.